Okay, so now that you know how to move around the worksheets, let's take a look specifically at worksheet 1 called the instruction worksheet. I'm going to keep a fairly low magnification for this demonstration, but if you have a copy of a COBie worksheet open to you, you might want to go ahead and make sure that you can read the material. I'm going to lay it out here so that you can see it all on one screen and you can get an idea of the flow of the page. So the first thing on the instruction worksheet is the title block, and that'll tell you the version of the COBie file and the purpose of this specific information exchange. Now we have generic versions up there, but if you're producing this information either by hand or by computer, you might want to go back in and make some modification, particularly to the information, the context of this specific exchange. And this would be where you would document that information up in the title block. The next group of information on the page is the list of each of the worksheets that's available to you on this particular version of a COBie file. And you might end up in a specific situation where all you're interested in doing is exchanging, say, the component list or the preventive maintenance schedule or some other piece. And you can go ahead and make that agreement, and this allows you to sort of get a sense of what is the contents of this file. You may also be able to put notes to the right if there's specific things that you want to point out to people about what you filled in or about what's there, what's missing, what have you. So that's a good place to do it, is out to the right. And of course you can always extend COBie files by just typing out to the right of whatever is in the standard fields. Down below the list of all of the worksheets is the color coding legend and some overall notes. Now, one of the things about the color codes is it really helps you understand what information is required to be filled out, what information is referenced information, and I'm kind of going down the list describing the yellow and the orange color. The purple color is information, if it's available, is provided by automated system. So if it's purple, that's not something you need to fill out. It should come automatically. In fact, you shouldn't modify it at all. The reason we have this matched up information is so if you ever want to go back and take the data in the COBie file and match it back into the model, you'll be able to do so with the data that's found in the purple fields. The green fields are the information is required if it's specified. So, you might consider that to be optional, but if it's specified, it's going to be required. Blue information is information that's off to the right of any one of the tabs, and that may be a local extension that you and your team decide you need to have for all of the items in a specific worksheet. You can add blue columns to the right, and provided your software systems consume or produce that data, you're fully welcome to extend it in that way. The tabs which are black with white letters indicate that they're not part of this particular file. And you'll notice that in this file there are some with these different colors. So as you can see by taking a look at the tabs on the bottom of this particular worksheet, we have contact, facility, floor, and space, type, and component are required to have data, and that data was provided. Zone and assembly are optional, and system connection, spare, and resource don't have any information in them. The reason that these don't have any information in them is because they weren't required in the contract deliverable, and so just to make sure you don't sort of get in there and wonder if you missed anything, we went ahead and color coded them so you know that there's not supposed to be anything there. So that's a pretty handy color convention to have, is the yellow and green and black, and of course the other ones that are available to you once you get into the worksheet, and they're all shown on the instructions list. So before we start talking about the next topic, which has to do with the file naming conventions that you and your team might think about when you're exchanging these files, I think it's useful to explain why you need a file naming convention. So I'm going to take a few slides and talk about that. So from my point of view, and a lot of others I would say, there's kind of a misconception about an idea of BIM collaboration. And people show this diagram, and everybody thinks that the architect and the structural, mechanical, electrical engineers, the plumbing designer, the estimator, builder, subcontractor, and even the operator are all going to use the same software server, and they're all going to send information and receive back information from this shared model server. I think that this is going to be quite difficult to accomplish, and even those people that sort of talk about this diagram now talk about it in a kind of very conceptual way, rather than say that this is actual a physically model of the way that this communication is going to take place. Simply contract requirements or limitations about who provides what software service at what phase would immediately throw a kind of shared model like this out on its ear. So people often think about that shared model as supporting collaboration. From my way of thinking, collaboration is an information exchange, but people have not been able to specify what the content of that information exchange is. If you were able to define the content of that information exchange, it would kind of become demystified. And really that's the point of this whole Building Smart Alliance activity, is to specify the exact content of the information exchange. So COBie is one example of that information exchange, and COBie is a definition based on specific contract requirements. So we actually have the data format and we have the contracts, and they go together to support the delivery of the information. So if you're thinking about when is collaboration and when is it information exchange, it's kind of like what happened when people were thinking about how smart computers could be, and they said, well, computers will be smart enough when they learn how to beat the chess grandmaster. Well, IBM's computer has done that, and now we've redefined computer smarts to be something else. So the bar is always going to get pushed back about collaboration, but I think the more important point here is that rather than collaboration, what we should be thinking about is contracted information exchanges, because that's the stuff that we can count on, and it doesn't matter if the contract is between a designer and a consultant or if it's between the owner and the constructor. We still have to have contracted information exchanges. So in thinking about the life cycle of a project, if we know we're not going to use these central model servers, what is maybe a better picture or an alternative picture of this whole thing? One kind of way to think about the layering of building information, and obviously this kind of thing is not to scale, but clearly there's information that comes from planners that gets overlaid by building information from designers. Constructors and subcontractors add the building information, and operators add their own set of information. And of course the cycle continues as operational activities become new planning activities and so forth. So I think what we could look at instead of this central collaborative model is a model where information is handed off to the next phase, much like we do in the way that we do business every day in designing construction projects, where you just hand it over to the next phase, only this time, instead of handing it over from planning to design, from design to build, and build to operate, and let the start of each new phase have to recreate the information, each new phase in our COBie model adds to the data that's previously available to us. So if we're going to take data from one party, exchange it to another, have it grow and change, have different versions of it, and so forth over time, then we might think that our team needs some kind of file naming convention. This is just one. Your team can come up with whatever file naming convention you like. My recommendation is that it starts with an ISO date, which is year, month, and day, and then you have the shorthand name for the project, a shorthand name for the phase of the project. In the case of this file we're looking at right now, it's the construction documents phase file. I'd have an idea of who originated it, and also that it contains COBie data. And you might also have versioning, and I would assume, just for general, that you might with some of these files get versions larger than 9. And so you might start it with a V and an O1. So if you send it back and forth a whole lot during a day and you get it updated, that the files aren't going to display out of order. So this is one naming convention. There's lots of others. You can make up your own on your project.